Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of TechPixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And this week I have a really special podcast that I'm bringing to you live. And it's all about how I use something called product launch formula to launch TechPixies and how I've been using it for many, many years. So I'm going to break down what product launch formula is and how it's served me. And I am going to make sure you know how to start learning how to use product launch formula yourself. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I have been running TechPixies, which is social media training. We've been running it since 2015. So it's now 2022. And we've been doing this for 7 years, which is absolutely astounding to me that 7 years later, we're still serving women, not only in the United Kingdom. Over 800 women have gone through our paid training. We've served 13,000 women across the United Kingdom, but we're now working with women in the US. And we have our very first cohort of US women starting on the 31st of October. So I have tried to sell TechPixies many, many, many different ways. And I know if you're listening to this podcast or you're watching it, you too probably have a service or a product that you are trying to sell online as well. And I didn't know how to sell anything online when I started TechPixies. In fact, TechPixies wasn't online. It was a face-to-face training program that we ran in an office space in Oxford. And we would put on Eventbrite, we would put an event and we would say, come to a taster session. And then people would come to the taster session and we would introduce what TechPixies was. We would say when the start date was, and then we'd follow up with them and either enroll them or we wouldn't enroll them. So, but we had a really high conversion rate. And if you've never heard the word conversion rate, that means we had a really high percentage of people who would come to the taster session and then convert to being a student. And that is literally how we built our first 100. We got our first 100 students into the program was working with people one by one, having a conversation with them, enrolling them, etc. And that system still works brilliantly, especially if you are just starting out and you're just getting going and you have a small number of people to work with. And I highly recommend still doing a system like that. However, I knew I wanted to scale the impact of the work that we were doing. And once we had worked with 100 women, I thought there's got to be another way to reach people. So the first step I made was to move everything online. We were meeting, like I said, face to face. Now, we made the decision to move online in 2019, which was quite exceptional considering what was coming, COVID. We did not know COVID was coming. And so when we made the decision to move TechPixies online, we then decided that we needed a new strategy for reaching people, because as soon as we were online, it was a totally different ballgame in terms of how we could connect with people, how we could reach people. And so that's when I started looking for ways to sell online. And initially, when we started reaching people with TechPixies online, it was through webinars. And I made lots of mistakes when I made the first webinars, but it was a really great learning curve in terms of how to improve your message and your messaging. So when I first started doing webinars with TechPixies, I would say, this is how you can upskill with modern technology in order to return to work, change careers, or start a business. I never, ever talked about the fact that we taught social media, that we taught digital marketing, that we taught websites, which was all part of our initial program. And it's shifted very much towards social media now. And we've thrown in bonuses around, websites and email marketing, etc. But my messaging was wrong, which made it hard for people to understand what we were doing, because people didn't really see modern technology as something they needed. Social media, on the other hand, everybody needed. So as my messaging dialed in, the webinar attendance went up. So we started with webinars, and I did webinars probably for about 4 months or so, where I would do a single webinar, and then we would say, right, if you want to join TechPixies, here's the information. And I gave them a sales page and I gave them a deadline to sign up. And we ran that for a couple cohorts, and that worked pretty well. But I then heard about this thing called product launch formula. And I heard about it through a book that someone had recommended to me. So I bought a book, and it was the very first version of the book. There's been a new version of it since. But the book was called Launch by Jeff Walker. And this is the launch symbol that I'm wearing on my shirt. It's an arrow that's pointing upwards. And it just made a lot of sense. And it took what I was doing from a webinar perspective and went much deeper. So it gave me the opportunity to build up a relationship with people over a longer period of time rather than just a single webinar. And I felt like it was the right way to go. So in about September of 2019, I would say that's about right when I switched to using product launch formula as the primary way that we got the TechPixies message out into the world. And that is really when we started introducing the social media supercharge, which was our first version of product launch formula. And then I introduced the Social Media Superhero Bootcamp, which is our second version of the product launch formula. So let me just break it down and what am I talking about? What do I mean? So webinars are great, and webinars are a great way to get your message out in a short period of time, but they don't build up a long relationship with someone or a deep relationship with someone if they've only watched the one webinar. So what product launch formula does is it's sort of like taking a sideways sales letter, right? So you all remember those big, long sales pages from years and years ago that people had that sold things to you online. Well, what product launch formula does is it converts that sales letter, that big, long page, and it converts it into multiple pieces of content, 4 pieces of content to be exact, and they build on each other. And Jeff's going to break this all down in his free training, which he's got coming up. And I've linked to it in and around this video. So if you're watching this video on our website, it's in the show notes. If you're watching on social media, I've linked to it in the text. And his training is amazing. And you should 100% do it because he gives ridiculous amount of value just on the book and the free training alone. And of course, if you want to go deeper like I did and go really really deep and get all the tactics and things, the product launch formula system is amazing, which, like I said, we've been using it for many, many years. So let me break down how this works. With a webinar, you do everything in an hour's period, right? So you explain who you are, you give your authority, you talk about, let's say, the 3 secrets of whatever it is that you're doing. So the 3 social media secrets you need to know about in 2022, or that will transform your social media in 2022. That could be a webinar. And TechPixies still has a webinar. We have a webinar called the Social Media Crash Course, and we are repurposing that so that introduces people to our self-paced social media superhero bootcamp. So it's an opportunity for someone to watch a webinar and then decide, I'm going to make a small investment in my learning and see if I like that. And we're going to use that in an evergreen capacity. So evergreen and webinars, those are all things that kind of run in the background, which can connect you to people in a fast way and a quick way. But product launch formula is about going deeper with someone and going deeper with someone really quickly. So the way that it breaks down is there are 4 parts, okay? And you can do this by video. I prefer to do it by live video. In fact, I found out about product launch formula through another course that I was doing on memberships. And one of the bonuses was about a woman who does dog training. And what I loved about the way that she talked about what she did was she decided that rather than do a pre-filmed video course over 4 videos, releasing 4 videos via email, she was going to do it live. So she did 4 videos live in Facebook, in a Facebook group, and it went really, really well. So I thought, well, that's a great idea. I can leverage social media and I can go live. So I have done that. I have launched product launch formula. I've launched with the live stream on the social media networks. I have done it privately on Zoom. I prefer to do it privately on Zoom. When we were doing it live on Facebook once, we got completely bombarded by someone who was trying to sell toilet paper. So that didn't work very well. But I've tried it all different ways. For us, what works really well is Zoom. So the most important thing, though, is whether you use Zoom, whether you use pre-recorded video, whether you do it live, the most important thing to know is the structure. Now, Jeff's going to go really deep on the structure in his training, but I'm going to give you an overview of how we use the structure at TechPixies with our social media superhero bootcamp. So the 4 parts are, the first part is the opportunity. Why should someone care, and why should they care about the product or the service that you're offering? Now, very often with a lot of people, this comes down to your own personal story. So let me break down the social media superhero bootcamp and how I show the opportunity. So in the very first day at the social media superhero bootcamp, I talk about TechPixies, how long we've been in business, how many people we've worked with. That's your authority piece. But then I talk about my own personal story, and I call it choose your own adventure. So I say, well, I have leveraged social media to get engaged, to return to work, and to change careers, and to launch a business. So which story do you want? And that's my way of telling my story of how I used social media to basically create the career that I love. And it's really funny because some people want to hear all the stories. Some people want to hear the business story. Some people want to hear the engagement story. In the end, I've worked out a way to craft the story so I tell the whole story. So the reason why people should care, right, in the opportunity about social media, it has to do with the fact that it gives you visibility, right? And so in the very first social media superhero bootcamp, I talk about taking off the invisibility cloak. And I talk about asking yourself, why do I want to use this? Why do I want to leverage it? Now, I know for a fact that it is a brilliant way to build a career, knowing how to use social media. There are a plethora of jobs out there in social media. But what I do by telling my personal story or by telling the story of my students is paint that picture of opportunity. So when you're selling a product using product launch formula, there are these 4 parts. And the first part is showcase the opportunity. What's the opportunity here? So what I say is, well, I got engaged, right? Using social media. So what's the story behind that? Well, I was going to the Beijing Olympics, and I knew that my ex-boyfriend was going to be at the Beijing Olympics, and I hadn't quite gotten over him yet, 7 years later, and I still wanted to meet up with him. So I sent him a direct message on Facebook, and I said, I'm going to be in China. You're going to be in China. Let's go meet. And we had beers and cicadas. We were in China. And 10 days later, we were engaged. So social media, using the direct messaging ability of Facebook, was the tool I used to reconnect with someone that I had fallen in love with once, didn't realize I was going to be engaged with them 10 days after re-meeting with them. But here we are, 2022. We've been married since 2009, going on 14 years of marriage. We've got 2 beautiful children. We have, it's been a wonderful life, right? But I can demonstrate really quickly the power of using social media to reconnect with someone, right? Which is very powerful. If you're on LinkedIn, you can use it to reconnect with old colleagues, etc. So I have stories of people who I've worked with who have similar type of stories. So Tony Whitney, I've talked about her. I've interviewed her on the podcast. She reached out to someone via direct messaging on LinkedIn. That person managed to reconnect, and then she ended up getting a job back in consulting, something she was doing, 12 to 17 years before, but had taken a career break. So that's the opportunity of becoming visible on social media. And I have so many stories like that from my alumni, but I usually like to tell mine. Because I'm trying to build up that know, like, and trust factor. So the other thing I talk about is how I volunteered for a charity, and I used my social media skills to set up their newsletter and to get their social media going. And then when they needed to hire someone, they hired me. Right? So a lot of people go into social media as a volunteer, and then they get paid. What my job is to help people move from volunteer to being paid much faster, right? That's one of the things. So, what I also like to say to people is, if you've been doing social media for free and you'd like to get paid, then the opportunity to learn how to use social media professionally will help you to do that, right? So it's really about why should I care, and it's about the transformation that your product can give someone. At this point, you haven't even mentioned your product, but you're talking about the end result and what the opportunity is if someone leans into that end result. And for me, leaning into social media meant I moved over to Europe. I got a job working for a charity. I launched my own blog and built that into a community, a community space in Switzerland. I then launched a training company and now have worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of women across the UK. So, I believe very strongly that the opportunity is there with social media to change your life. And when I teach it in our very first training as part of the social media superhero bootcamp, that's what I'm seeding is two things. One, in order to leverage social media to make your life better, you're going to have to take off the invisibility cloak. That's the superpower we all have. And two, we've really got to answer this question of why do I want to use social media? And is it to, to increase my income? Is it to launch a business? Is it to change careers? Is it to get married in my case, which I didn't, that wasn't planned. It just sort of happened that way. But why do I want to use it? So we get really clear on that. And that is the teaching, right? Take off the invisibility cloak and lean into why do I want to use it? And I use my story and the stories of different students who've gone through my program to showcase the opportunity. What does life look like if you learn how to leverage social media properly? So in the product launch formula, that is our very first video, if you will. And we call it Superpower 1 and Superpower 2. And that's taking off your visibility cloak and knowing why you want to use it. What this does is it says, okay, now that you've taken off your invisibility cloak and now that you know why you want to use it, let's lean into the transformation, right? So this goes down to what transformation is possible for the person. And in the Superhero Bootcamp, when we talk about transformation, I talk about the next logical step. You've taken off your invisibility cloak. You are, you now know why you want to use it. Okay, so what networks do we need to use? And what type of content do we need to create, right? So really important to say, all right, I'm the superhero. I'm ready to be out there flying, with my cape. But then what do I actually, it's the what, right? So the first video is why. Why is this important to me? Why does this matter? The second video is what? Like, what the heck do I do next in order to get this transformation? So in our Superhero Bootcamp, what we talk about in the what is what networks do we use and what and when do we post? And that's when I go through my network matrix and I give lots of different examples of students who've leveraged social media to launch their businesses, to get work, to collaborate with each other, etc. And then I also talk through what I call the sunflower effect. So I talk about, the 3 different types of content you can create in 2022, which is podcasts, videos, and blogs, and how they can all work together. I talk about the how you get that message out to the world through email, websites, and social media. And then I talk about how you tie it back to your business. And that is the what, right? That's the what. Okay, if I'm going to be brave, I'm going to put my brave pants on, I'm going to use social media, then what do I need to do to actually use it? And that's really this transformation. How do I take this opportunity and actually leverage it, right? So in product launch formula, that's what the second video that you create in a series of 4 videos is all about. It's all about the transformation. It's all about the what, right? What is actually possible? And when I teach that content on the bootcamp, what I do is I give an example for every single network. So 2 of my favorite examples are Sarah Dawson. So she is a horse race trainer out of Northern Ireland. And during lockdown, she started creating videos about horse training and introducing her horses and introducing her yard. And she was able to generate customers from those videos on Facebook, which was brilliant, right? So that's one of the examples that I give. I also talk about Karen Evans, who sells rubber ducks. So when she came through our social media superhero bootcamp, she wanted to learn how to leverage social media to increase the sales of the rubber ducks. They had a rubber duck shop, but they also had an online presence, but the online presence hadn't been leveraging social media to its maximum. So I helped her with that, right? TechPixies helped her with that. And so I talk about that story. So I talk about the transformations there. Now, she had an amazing transformation. Her business grew massively as a result. It grew 138% year on year as a result of leveraging social media and leveraging email marketing. And I did an amazing interview with her about that. And I think that just goes to show what transformation is possible. And I also use those examples to say, look, you can sell anything on social media. You can sell racehorse training and you can sell rubber ducks, right? And so those are two of the stories that I love to tell. I have lots of other stories, but as I'm teaching the different networks, I break down stories from different people who have leveraged those networks to get the result that they want. And I show that transformation. Another person that I talk about is Carrie Rian, which I'll talk about in this third video that I'm discussing with Product Launch Formula. So Product Launch Formula has 4 major parts. Now, there's lots of other parts that have to do with emails, beforehand, afterhand, all that stuff, and the social media build up to it, etc. But the third part of Product Launch Formula is all about ownership, right? And this is actually getting the person that you're speaking to take ownership in the change they would like to see in their life, right? I often say to people, especially when we get to the offer, which is the 4th video, I often say to people, your investment in TechPixies is not actually in TechPixies. It's in you. It's in you because you're investing your money, your time, your energy, your effort into a transformation for you. We will facilitate that transformation. But at the end of the day, if you don't watch the videos, if you don't go use the social media networks, if you don't put your brave pants on, if you don't take off your invisibility cloak, we're not going to be able to help you, right? You could give us all the money in the world, but if you don't actually take those steps, your life's not going to change, right? So the third part is the how, right? It's the ownership side. And it's really, it's how do they take ownership of the change? How does this person take ownership of the change that they want to see in their life? And this is also where I like to, in the Superhero Bootcamp, talk about the biggest mistake I see people make with social media. And really, it comes down to the fact that people think that creating content is the end game for social media, that if they're creating content, that it should work. And it doesn't work that way because there are tricks and tips you need to employ in order to get your social media content to get the reactions that you want, and in order to convert people from social media to email. So on the 3rd day of the Social Media Superhero Bootcamp, I go into 2 more really important social media superhero superpowers, right? So we've got the invisibility cloak and we've got the your enhanced future vision from day 1, which is taking off the invisibility cloak and becoming visible on social media, and why do I want to use it? And then on day 2, I talk about network navigation. Which network am I going to use? And then I talk about social media speed and agility, the ways that social media works in 2022. When I move into the 3rd day, where we're moving from opportunity to transformation to ownership, then that's when I talk about how social media really works, right? And I then go through something called the 6 Bs, and I talk about market. It's called market magnetism. That's my superpower. So market magnetism. We talk about the 6 Bs, and I walk them through the things that you need to do on social media in order for social media to actually work for you. So, for example, you need to be on brand, professional. You need to be authentic. I talk about if you don't wear makeup in real life, then don't wear makeup online. Don't feel like you have to change who you are to impress somebody, right? You need to be who you are. Be you, and you'll attract the right people to you, right? I mean, I normally am wearing stars today. I have my star earrings in, but I'm otherwise wearing my launch top because I'm talking about launching, and so that's why I'm wearing it. But generally, you want to be on brand, authentic, and professional. And then there's other things like beyond when your followers are on, that your content is relevant, right? That the content's not about you, it's about the person that you're reaching. What do they want to hear, right? This podcast is a breakdown of exactly how I use Jeff Walker's product launch formula for TechPixies. And it works every single time. I have never run product launch formula and had it not work. I have always had people enroll in our program using the system. So when I get to the 3rd day and I'm talking about ownership, I'm talking about, okay, you're going to put your stuff on social media and now you got to own that space. And these are the 6 things you need to do in order to own that space, right? You've got to be relevant with your content. You got to be on brand. You got to be professional. I talk about the no comment left behind rule. Like always, always, always reply to every comment that anybody ever leaves you on social. So I talk about that. I also talk about checking your analytics. A lot of people don't check their analytics. I can't tell you the number of people that I talk to that have no idea what content's doing well versus not doing well because they put it out there and then they never check it and they never look at it. They never analyze it. So really important to know where your analytics are. So that's the ownership side. Okay, right? I'm brave. I know which networks I'm going to use. I'm going to put myself out there, and now I need to own it, right? And how do I own it? Well, I own it with the 6 Bs. And then we need to own it by moving people off of social media and onto email, right? So this is mailing list magic, and that's the 6th superpower. So a big part of product launch formula and launching a product using product launch formula is understanding how the 3 videos work before you do your offer video, but also how it works within the context of your product. And so our product is social media training. So each of these videos have to also include a bit of social media training, a bit of social media savviness. So interestingly enough, what we did to introduce the social media savviness into the very first video was we teach about Canva. So we have homework after each video. Now, not all people do homework within Product Launch Formula, but I like to do homework because it solidifies what people are learning. So at the end of video 1, we teach people how to use Canva, and we have them craft a vision board for what they'd love for their vision for social media to be 3 months from now. They go and they create it, but then they're now introduced, if they haven't been already, they're now introduced to a great tool that is brilliant at creating graphics for social media. It's designed to be used for social media and websites and emails, etc. So that's how we leverage that's how we get people to do a little bit of homework to bring home what they've learned on the training, right? So you have to think about how what you're teaching relates to the person and how you can get them to take one little small piece of action that helps them to feel more confident. So we usually have a lot of people who get really excited about the vision board because they go in and they get really creative, and they never saw themselves as a creative person. And they suddenly go, oh, I am creative. I know how to do this. So it builds their confidence. But what we're talking about is something you can't do in a 1-hour webinar. So this relationship that we're building up over a 4-day period of time, we can't build up this relationship that we're building over a 4-day period of time. We can't build up in 1 hour, and we can't build up the know, like, and trust factor with homework and everything else when we just do a 1-hour webinar, which is why I really love this system. So when it comes to the third video, you're talking about ownership. For me, I'm talking about owning social media and knowing that you don't actually own the networks, and the networks sort of own you. So if a network goes down and you've had all of your contact, or your account gets banned, or something happens to your account, if you don't have another way of connecting with your social media followers, you're sort of stuffed. And a lot of people panicked. Facebook went down for a day. I don't know if Twitter went down, but Instagram went down for a day. Different accounts have gone down at different points. And if all of your contacts are there and then suddenly it's gone, you lose the ability to connect with them outside of social media. You're sort of screwed if your entire system is built on social media. So the 6th superpower that I talk about, which is about ownership, is really owning the relationship with someone. So you use social media to connect with people you've never connected with before. And then you use something called a lead magnet to build that relationship even further. So at TechPixies, one of our number 1 lead magnets is our Social Media Superhero Bootcamp. It is our social media crash course. And these are ways for people to get free content from us, to then start a relationship with us, to move into that customer relationship. But here's why the ownership part really matters when it comes to social media. Social media is only seen by 3 to 10% of your social media following will actually see your content. When it comes to a newsletter or an email, typically 20 to 60%, depending on how good of an email list you've built up, will see your content. So the likelihood of your content being seen via email is much, much higher than it is via social media, unless you're willing to invest in paid advertising, which amplifies your content in front of the people that are already in your world or to people that don't know you. But email is a fantastic way to have a much deeper connection with people. So on the third training that I do, I talk about how someone would actually move from using social media to launching a business, or using social media to get that job. And it's about creating content and emailing that content out every week, so they own that relationship. And so whatever they want to use it for, whatever they want to use social media for, the end on the third day, I talk about the importance of getting people that they want to work with off of social and onto email, and building up the relationship from email. And I say the sales are in the mails. And what we don't teach at TechPixies is product launch formula, because Jeff does it so well. So I always say to people, look, here's the deal. You can't launch a product. You can't launch a product to anybody if you don't have a social media following and you don't have an email list. So my job is to get the people who don't yet have mailing lists, who don't yet have social media followings, onto social media, creating that email list, building up those relationships so that they can do something fantabulous with it, like product launch formula, and then launch a product, right? It could be a course, it could be a membership, it could be a product, right? But so many people don't get this point, that you can't launch a product online, whether it's a course, a service, a membership, or an actual physical product. You can't launch a product without a mailing list. You can't launch a product without a social media following. And you really ideally need both. So the TechPixies program, which is our social media accelerator, our VIP group coaching program, all of our social media training, that's the precursor to product launch formula. If you don't have the social media following, you don't have the mailing list, you're going to struggle to launch a product, right? So you've got to build up that first. And, it doesn't take much. You can launch a product to a small list, right? Think back to when I started at TechPixies. I didn't know all this stuff about launching, but I did know that if I followed up with every single person on my mailing list and had a personal conversation with them, the chances were higher that they would invest in themselves by doing a TechPixies course, because I made the effort to reach out to them. We had a 38% conversion rate on the first 400 people on our mailing list, meaning 38% of the people on our mailing list signed up to work with us. As we grew, that percentage decreased, but that's only natural because we now have tens of thousands of people on our mailing list, right? So I'm going to be hard pressed to call 10,000 people, right, and speak to every single person. But we have these systems in place now, so that we have the calls, and we have the sales page, and we have the emails, and all of that Jeff taught me how to do, all of it. Now, I had some precursor training with a couple of other amazing mentors, but this actual system of building up the know, like, and trust factor over four sessions, that was all Jeff. And it transformed the game for TechPixies. And it really made a huge difference. I went from doing webinar launches where I would maybe have 6 or 7 or 8 people signing up, to combining, we at one point we had, I think, like 4,000 people signed up for one of them, and I had 1,000 people live, and we ended up having 117 students in one go. Now, we did invest in advertising at that point, but the reality is I had a proven system that I knew would sell, and I knew would enroll new students. And so when we put money behind it, then we knew that it was going to work. We weren't putting money behind something we didn't know was going to work, right? So that's really important. And we still use advertising today to launch our product, if you will, with product launch formula. But I know we're going to make our money back every time. So that's why we do it. In fact, let me just put this out there. The one time that I changed the game and went away from product launch formula and went back to webinars was the one time we went backwards financially. And it took us a very long time to recover from, like really long, like we're probably still recovering from that. And that was a year ago. So 2021 in October, I decided to make some major radical changes to what we were doing to try something different because our ad prices were getting really, 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 really high. And that's when things went backwards. And I spent a whole year rebuilding, but I've relied on product launch formula to rebuild. I've relied on that to rebuild, which is absolutely incredible. I just launched the TechPixies Social Media Accelerator in America for the very first time. And what did I use? Product launch formula. What did I do? The Social Media Superhero Bootcamp. And we made our money back and we brought in new students in America. And it was a beautiful experience. I had just the most amazing experience. But I've done this formula before. It works. It works every single time. And you get better and better at it the more you do it. So really important to know that I believe in this system. And I know that this system was a huge part in our ability to grow, but it's also been a huge part in our ability to recover from trying to switch it up and do something else that didn't work as well. Okay, so then the fourth part of product launch formula is this fourth video, and that's your offer. Often this is what would be your traditional webinar. In the Social Media Superhero Bootcamp, what I do is on the fourth video, I recap everything we've learned. I go through all 6 social media superhero superpowers. I make sure if there's any questions, people can ask them. So we talk about, I remind them of what the opportunity of learning social media is for their life. I remind them what the transformation is, what could be possible for them. And I remind them of the stories of people who really took ownership in this transformation, who really leaned in. I always say, the students who show up and do the work get the results. So when I'm pitching the offer to join TechPixies, to join our social media accelerator, when I'm making that offer, I'm saying to them, this is your opportunity to invest in you. It's your opportunity to change your life. And I can tell you, the students who lean in, who do the work, who show up for the coaching calls, they get the results. And those are the stories that I share, the stories of people who own it, who lean into it, who leverage it. And I just, I love it. And actually, as I'm watching this, Mandy Hughes is here. I've got a great podcast episode with Mandy, and I got to catch up with her because I know she just got a huge job. But Mandy is a perfect example. She said, TechPixies changed my life. Mandy is a perfect example of someone who came in, did the work, showed up, did the coaching calls, applied what she learned, owned it. And now she's got, her life has changed as a result. And she's got, her dream job. So it's really exciting to me to see people move through and look at the opportunity, understands the transformation, lean into owning it, and then run with it, right? And that is a beautiful thing at TechPixies. So the fourth part, like I said, is the offer. So what I do is at this point, and what Jeff says at this point is it's really making sure that the person you're talking to trusts themselves enough to make the transformation. Is this person going to be able to lean in and make this transformation? Are they going to be able to use my system to create a new life for themselves, right? So that's what this is all about. And then are they going to say yes? Are they going to say yes to the opportunity? And not everyone says yes to the opportunity, right? Not everyone says yes to the opportunity, but those who do say yes, and those who do lean in, and those who do apply the formula, they get the results. And that is a really, really, really beautiful thing. So I see Laura here is also watching. She says, I'm here too. I've definitely seen how being involved and leaning into the TechPixies content can change your life. And she's on her way. Exactly. So she's leaning in, she's learning, she's moving forwards, which is amazing. All right, so I've wrapped all this up for you. There's 4 videos in the product launch formula. The first one's about opportunity. The second one's about transformation. The third one is about ownership. And the fourth one is about the offer. Is the person you're working with ready to invest in themselves and change their lives? So if you're interested in this training that Jeff's going to do, I've given you about 30 minutes of my time to explain how I use it in my business. But if you want to really invest some time, Jeff's got an amazing free training series. We're going to link to it in and around the video or in the email that this might come out on. But definitely click on that link. Go and watch his free training. It's absolutely amazing. And I know you're going to benefit from it massively. If you have any questions, email us at support@techpixies.com. If you decide later on you want to join Product Launch Formula, we have a bonus, especially for those who join through TechPixies. So make sure you reach out to us if you're interested in that bonus. Thanks for listening, and I hope you got a lot of value out of how TechPixies leverages Product Launch Formula to reach and change the lives of women now in the United States and the United Kingdom. Have a great day.